All right, so today we're diving into something a little different. Um, we're taking a swing, if you will, at Thai politics.
I see what you did there.
Had to. No, but seriously, there's this article from Ocean Worldwide Phuket Real Estate's blog, and it caught my eye because, well, who knew a golf course could be so scandalous, right?
Right. It's not your typical geopolitical crisis, but that's what makes it so interesting.
Exactly. So basically, this golf course is at the center of this whole political storm, and it involves, drumroll please, the Prime Minister of Thailand herself.
This is juicy stuff. Okay, so for our listeners who might not be following Thai politics super closely, who are we talking about here?
We're talking about Paetongtarn Shinawatra, and that last name, Shinawatra, it's huge GE in Thai politics. Like her father, Thaksin Shinawatra, was prime minister. He was ousted in a military coup, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then her aunt, Yingluck Shinawatra, she became prime minister. And guess what?
Don't tell me.
Another coup.
Yep, ousted on a coup.
Hmm?
So yeah, talk about a political dynasty, but also a family with, shall we say, a complicated legacy. It sounds like it. So where does this golf course fit into all of this?
Okay, so the golf course is called the Alpine Golf and Sports Club. Very fancy. And the thing is, in Thailand, there's this law, right? And this law says that government ministers, they can't own a lot of shares in any company, like a small percentage, just 5%.
5%? That's pretty small. Why such a low limit?
Well, the idea is to prevent corruption, conflicts of interest. Imagine if a minister in charge of, I don't know, transportation also owned a huge chunk of a train company or something.
I see. So they're trying to avoid those kinds of situations where someone in power could personally benefit from decisions they make in their official capacity.
Exactly. So this law, it's all about keeping things above board.
Makes sense. So how does our prime minister and her family's golf course run into trouble with this law?
Well, it turns out that before Peyton Tarn became prime minister, she owned a sizable chunk of this golf club.
Oh, really? And by sizable, you mean?
Try 30%.
Whoa, that's quite a bit more than 5%. So what happened? Did she sell her shares before taking office?
That's where things get really interesting. So she did end up getting rid of those shares, right? To, comply with the law.
Well, she did transfer them. She transferred her shares, all 30%, to her mother.
To her mother. But wait, didn't you say earlier that her family already owned a big chunk of this golf club?
Exactly. That's the thing. So before Pakongtarn transferred her shares, you had her siblings, each with 30%.
Wow, okay, so most of the club.
Yeah, and then their mother had 10%. So it's very much a family business, you could say.
Mm.
But now, after this transfer, even though Pakongtarn technically isn't breaking the law anymore, it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
Well, is she really distancing herself from those assets? Or is it just a way to sidestep the rules while still potentially benefiting?
Ah, I see. It's is it a real change or just some political maneuvering?
Exactly. And of course, this has fueled a lot of criticism, accusations of trying to avoid scrutiny, things like that.
Makes sense. So what do the legal experts have to say about this whole transferring shares to her mom thing? Is it enough to actually address those conflict of interest concerns?
Well, it's a bit of a gray area, to be honest. There are legal opinions on both sides of the issue. Some experts say that as long as she doesn't directly control those shares, there's no real problem.
Mm.
But then others argue that giving them to a close family member doesn't really change anything.
Right, because the potential for influence is still there.
Exactly. And then there's Ruang Krai Likitwatana, remember the activist who filed that complaint?
Oh, yeah. What's he saying about all of this?
Well, he's not letting up at all. He's calling this transfer a smokescreen, basically.
Mm.
He wants a full-blown investigation by the Election Commission to figure out if there were any secret agreements about these shares. Any promises about how they'll be managed, or if Paetongtarn will still somehow profit from them.
It all sounds very familiar, doesn't it? I mean, didn't her father and aunt face similar accusations when they were in power? Something about corruption, shady business dealings, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. The Shinawatra family has been followed by these kinds of allegations for years. And whether or not this latest scandal leads to any real legal trouble, it definitely adds fuel to that fire.
It's almost like a pattern.
Yeah, you could say that. This certainly makes you think about their family's relationship with power, right? And how they've used it.
Definitely. It's this constant tension between economic development, because Thailand did see a lot of growth under the Shinawatras, but then there's this question of how that growth happened and was it always done by the book?
Hit the nail on the head. It's a classic dilemma, really, especially in developing countries. How do you balance progress with ethics, with good governance? It's not easy.
It's Speaking of complicated, I can't believe we haven't even gotten to the land itself yet. It's not just about the shares, right? There's a whole other layer to this story.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where things get even juicier.
Ooh, I love a good plot twist. This is why we do these deep dives, right? Always something unexpected lurking beneath the surface. So, spill the tea. What's the deal with this golf course land?
Okay, so get this. The Alpine Golf and Sports Club, it's sitting on land that was originally donated, like way back in 1971, to a Buddhist temple.
Wait, seriously. From a temple to a golf course. How does that even happen?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And the story behind how that land went from a temple to this golf club, well, it's shady, to say the least. In fact, a former leader from the Futai Party, the same party Patong Tarn leads,
Yeah.
he ended up in prison because of this land deal.
Whoa, are you serious? One of her own party members?
Yep. Back in 2017, this guy, Young Youth Wicharit, he was a big deal in the Futai Party, and he gets convicted. Abuse of authority, that was the charge, because he basically cancels an order that would have reversed the sale of this land.
The sale of the temple land.
The temple land to the golf club, over 270 acres. So yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Wow. That's a pretty direct link back to Patong Tarn's party.
Right. And it makes you wonder about, like, is this a one-time thing or is there a pattern of behavior here?
Yeah, like, are
Yeah.
we seeing a bigger picture with this party and how they operate?
Exactly. And it all feeds into this narrative about, powerful people, political elites, using their influence to benefit from these shady land deals,
Mm.
often at the expense of, well, everyone else.
It's like that saying, power corrupts.
Right. And absolute power corrupts, absolutely. But for our listeners who might be thinking, okay, interesting story, but why should I care about some political scandal in Thailand? What's the takeaway here?
What's the, universal truth in all of this?
It's about more than just Thailand, right? This whole thing, it shines a light on corruption, on the fight for land rights, on how power gets concentrated in the hands of a few, and these are issues that every country on this planet deals with in some way or another.
It's like a microcosm of a much bigger global issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that no matter what system of government you have, there will always be people who try to game the system, who try to grab power for themselves. And that's why we need things like a free press, like citizens who are engaged and holding their leaders accountable. Those things are so important.
So where do we go from here? What are you watching for as this story unfolds?
Well, for me, it all comes down to accountability. Like,
Yeah.
will the Election Commission actually do anything about this complaint? Will they investigate Patong Tarn's share transfer, dig deeper into this whole land scandal? And then, of course, there's the court of public opinion. How will the Thai people react to all of this? Will this be the final straw, or will they stick with her? It'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
It always is with these deep dives. It's like you start with something seemingly small, and then you pull on the thread, and this whole other world unravels. But one thing's for sure, the intersection of money, power, and land. It's a recipe for intrigue no matter where you are in the world. In this case, it's a stark reminder that those struggles, they're happening everywhere, even in our own backyards. We'll definitely keep an eye on this one and see what other twists and turns are in store. For now, though, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the heart of Thai politics. Until next time.